let's start today, guys. Very good evening, all of you. Hope you all are well. Let's start with the third chapter. Okay. Now, in this third chapter, we will be learning one programming paradigm that is called as procedure oriented programming. In the previous two chapters, we were just writing structured script, means we were just writing sequence of instructions, and all that instructions were getting executed from beginning till end, right? Now here we are going to see another different approach of coding called as a procedure oriented coding or procedure oriented programming, right? So what is a procedure? All that we'll be learning. Then types of functions, procedure, or you can call it as a subprogram, or you can call it as a function, right? Many names are there. So sometimes they call it as subroutine, or you call it as a function or a procedure or a subprogram. Any name you can give. But what it is, then what are their types, all that we'll be learning. But before that, why procedure oriented coding, or what will be the benefit of going for procedure oriented approach, that we have to discuss. Get it? So first we'll discuss that, then we will take the systematic definition of a function or a procedure, and then their types and their advantages, all that one by one. Gradually we'll move on. Okay? So before that, I'll just take one simple example of problem solving, one very simple problem solving example, and through that example I'll just try to convince why there is a need of procedure oriented coding, or how procedure oriented program will benefit you. Okay? So I'm taking a very simple basic problem which comes in our day-to-day programming problem, that is addition of two matrices. Now matrix is a mathematical object in which the numbers are arranged in the form of rows and columns, right? So what is a matrix? Matrix is a mathematical object in which the numbers are getting arranged in the form of rows and columns, right? So I want to do addition of two matrices, one matrix and second, and after that store it in the third, right? Now if I want to solve this problem using structured scripting approach, which we did it in the previous two chapter, getting? So according to that, the general steps, now I am writing only the superficial step, I am not writing the detailed steps, means the detail algorithm I am not writing, I am just writing the English statements. Okay, so first activity what you'll do is you'll write the code for accepting matrix first, that is A. So here in simple English I am writing line, but actually when you'll write a code for it, so you'll write a proper for loop for accepting that matrix. And one matrix means it is elements in rows and column form. So all that elements you cannot accept in one single line. Obviously you have to accept many elements of one row, and that way many rows. So you have to write a nested loop. So you'll write that code for accepting first matrix. Then you'll write a code for accepting second matrix, isn't it? Then you'll write a code for adding the corresponding elements of A and B and store it in C. So for that too, and again here you cannot do the addition in one step, isn't it? You have to do element by element. When first element 0 0 0 0 0 1 0 1. This way first row all correspond. Then I'll go to the next rows corresponding. So obviously for that I have to write some nested loops. Then I have to display the result. So I want to display the first matrix, then I'll display the second matrix, and then I'll display the result matrix. So for all this you are going to write logics, because I said now till now you don't know the procedure oriented approach. So obviously by taking the previous two chapters knowledge, you'll write a structured script, sequence of steps you'll write. So you'll write nested for loop for accepting first, accepting second. You'll write a nested for loop for addition of 2 and storing. Then the printing logic also will write 3 times. First A printing, then B printing, then C printing. So from this, I'm sure you might have observed some drawbacks or some limitations. Getting? So one very prominent one which everyone might have observed, right? What do you say? Each and every person might have immediately identified that one drawback in this approach of writing a structured script, getting not a procedure oriented script. If I'm writing just a structured script using the previous chapter's conditional statement and loops and all, and that before that in the first chapter operators and variables and all, so all that knowledge if I use and I try to write it, so one common limitation or drawback I'm sure you might have observed. What do you think? At least one person should be able to respond. No, not a single person. By seeing this approach, some limitations. So now we have to identify the limitations, but what do you think? What limitations you identify in this? No? Nothing. Not a single person. You're hearing me, no, all of you. As I said yesterday, just don't log and then busy watching the score and in between busy checking WhatsApp messages. Don't do all that thing. Only 1.5 hour concentrate here. Okay. Divya wants to tell something.
So I think the size of the program will increase.
But why do you think?
Space
That
for
is obviously ultimately the size is going to increase. But why do you think the size of the program is increased?
So because of the procedure oriented approach, we need to write everything in detail without using functions and all. So that's why I think
Procedure oriented means structured approach.
yes, sir.
Procedure we are going now. Okay, but detail, okay, there also we have to write the detail step. Why do you think this program is going to be too bigger? Gautam also wanted to say something.
So, we might not reuse the same code here
Yes,
in
very good, very
structured
good. You have
oriented.
observed it. Now, obviously, now you should be able to. You have a big experience backup. You have in your, isn't it? You're not a fine now graduation student, no? Okay, right. He has observed it. What about others also? The one thing is we are not able to do the reusability of the code. And the main software goal is that only. Na? Every software development approach is that okay, whatever is being developed, it should be reused for some other development, right? So here, if you see the accepting logic for A is not going to change for B. Only the matrix change. Is only the matrice change. But the code will be obviously same for loop, same for loop. Same way for printing also. Now, okay, for addition, there is no reusability. But still, writing function for addition will also have one benefit. I'll tell you that. Okay? And the printing logic also. Printing A matrix and printing B matrix and printing C matrix. Is the code going to change other than the matrix? Only matrix is changing, but the code is same. Same for loops. So still you are writing it 3 times. So you are not reusing this logic. The same logic you are not reusing for 3 times. You are writing the same thing 3 times. Donkey work you are doing. Getting? And because of that, the overall program size will be bigger. Because of that, the overall complete program will be bigger. Why the size of the program will be bigger? Obviously you know it. Because the same code is repeated 3 times. The accepting logic is repeated 3 times. Okay, so one drawback is clear to you, right? So one drawback what you observe in this, that is code redundancy. I hope the term redundancy you know it. Redundancy means repetition. So code redundancy is there. Now, because of code redundancy, the overall program size is bigger. If the program size is bigger, it is not good to manage it. Means managing such code is obviously going to be difficult. It is not an elegant code, not a clean code. You understanding? So managing of this code is also going to be difficult, right? Moreover, if you want to do bug fixing, like, or the logic change, like suppose you realize like, okay, I want to make some code modification for accepting. So am I supposed to do the change in both the place, or I'm changing some printing logic? So is that logic to be changed at both the places? So meaning making changes in such code is also difficult. Bug fixing, as I said, I want to find out the error. So is the bug becoming localized? Bug fixing localized? No. You have to search the bug throughout. And then if you find out there is a bug in this print, obviously it will be here also and obviously here also. So lot of things are there. Getting because of one reason, so many things. Because of redundancy, reusability of the code is not there. The size of the code is becoming bigger. Ultimately, the size is bigger. It is not a readable code. It is not an elegant code, not a sophisticated code. It is not a manageable code. Changing is very difficult, okay? Because if one change, you have to make changes at many places. Getting means that is called as code independency. Code independency meaning if one change doesn't lead to many changes. Because of one change, there are not abundant of changes. So it is code independence. But if one change is leading to many changes, so obviously your code is not a independent code. Getting? So all these are what? Drawbacks. Right? So instead of that, if I write a sub-program for all activities. So if you visualize your main problem, okay, a complex problem of addition of two matrices as three sub problems. One is accept, one is add, and another is print. So if you just visualize from that point of view, how many times it is needed, don't think from that point. Just think that ki my main problem is addition of two matrices, and that problem I'm dividing it into sub problem. These are all problem solving approaches also. I'm sure somewhere in your academics you have studied problem solving paper as well. You had some problem solving paper, problem solving using C. Then you have studied different design analysis strategies. Okay, so this is as good as like a divide and conquer strategy. So you are going to divide your problem into sub problem. So you are not thinking from what point of view, how many times it will be needed. You are just thinking this is the main problem and these are the sub tasks. And for every sub problem, you will assign a designated task. Okay, this is going to do only the accepting task. This is only going to do the addition task. This is just going to do the printing task. Getting or no? Clear? And for each such sub problems, that is your main problem divided into sub problem. For every sub problem, you'll write a separate sub program. Getting? Also called as a function or a procedure. You can call it as a function, procedure, subroutine, sub-program. Many names are there. So for every sub-task, clear, you'll write what? Sub-programs. And now you write that sub-programs and keep it once only. And then you can make them to run. This is just the definition. Means only telling ki what task that sub-program is supposed to do. Means we are just defining the algorithm and we are telling ki please you do this task, you do this task, you do this task. Now it is not going to perform that task unless and until you call it. Getting? So you have defined the task and kept, given some name to them. Getting? And we have told that this is your name and you have to do this task. This is your name, do this task. Okay. and then make that task to run by calling them. So you will call them, and can I call them repeatedly? Because if I need accept twice, so I'll call twice. If I need printing thrice, so I'll call it thrice. Getting? And now you will say like add, anyway it's not getting reused. But then also the design approach becomes more cleaner, no? That addition we have kept it separate and only calling that accept. Getting? So accept me, add. So accept, then call accept, then call add, and then call print thrice. Now, will it make your code obviously smaller in size? Yes, because the repetition logic you have put once only within the function. Getting? And then you are just calling that function any number of times. Remember, unless and until you call, it won't get executed. Unless and until you call, it won't get executed. Getting? Calling means requesting to get executed. You understanding or no? Like in your parking, you have purchased a BMW, you have purchased a limousine and all, but just you have purchased and kept it in the parking. Getting? Never you start it and bring on the road and you go for a drive and bring it. So it is like just defining. You are not utilizing it. So same way, calling means you are requesting to get executed. So you will call them any number of times, as many times you want. Now, will this code become an elegant code? Will it be a proper readable code, systematic, sophisticated code? You have divided the task into subtasks. For each subtask, you have defined a separate subprogram, given a name to it. Then in your main program, you're calling them, requesting it to get executed. Then will it be proper manageable code? Yes. In the future, if you want to make changes, is the change going to be localized? Am I supposed to do changes everywhere or only in that particular function? Bug fixing also, if I want to find out the error, am I supposed to find error throughout the code or only in that particular function? Bug fixing becomes localized. Like we say, like if I'm having my teeth problem, so I'll go to dentist only. No? Means my search becomes local because dentist is specialized for that only. If I'm having some brain related problem, so I'll go to a neurologist only. I have kidney problem, so I'll go to a nephrologist only. So why? Because my problem fixing will become localized. Getting on? Because they are specialized in that. So here also in the code, the error searching will become easy if you have written it in a separate procedures. Getting? So ultimately what I want to tell you is the need of procedure oriented coding instead of structured scripting. Instead of writing structured scripting, why procedure oriented script is going to be beneficial. Getting? So first, is it going to avoid redundancy? Redundancy, that is repetition, will get avoided. Your code will become more readable, cleaner code. It will be a proper manageable code. Getting? Changes can be done easily. Bug fixing can be done easily. Getting? And reusability of the code is also there. Once defined, can we call them any number of times, as many times we want. Getting? So all that are benefits. So now can I give a systematic definition of what is a function? Okay. So can I say function is a named code block? It's a code block, but to that code block some name is given. Getting? And that code block performs some specific task when it is called. I'm clarifying it. So whenever you call it, it will do its designated task or its prescribed task. Right? So can I define a function as a subprogram, or it is a procedure, or it's a subroutine, which is a code block with some name, and that code block is performing some specific task whenever called. Getting? And then can this subtask receive some parameters also from the outside world, and can it return some value back also to the caller? So it can give also some value back to the caller, and from the caller, that is from the outside world, it can take some value on which it will do the operation. Whatever operation it's going to do, it can operate on that values. Okay, so just give me confirmation if this explanation is clear, then we can move on to the definition of function.
Yes, sir.
Sure, all of you, others, gradually we are moving to more and more coding part. Huh? ठीक है? See, so functions. So can I say function is a named code block? Means it's a code block, but to that some name is given. And is this code block performing some specific task? Yes. But will it perform task only when it is called? So unless and until you call it, it is not going to run. As I said, like in the parking, you have just purchased and kept it. Okay, so you have purchased a very costly bike or whatever, Hayabusa and Harley Davidson and whatever, but you're not driving only, means you're not igniting it and you're bringing on the road and you're not driving. There is no use, you're not utilizing it. The same way, defining the function is not of use unless and until you call it. When you call it in your code, you're requesting it for getting executed. Getting? So define is one part and calling is one part. Okay? So once define can be called any number of times. Okay? And can these functions take some value also from the outside world? Yes. And can it return also something back to the outside world? Yes. So a function is a named code block. It is performing some specific task, but this task will be executed only when it is called. Getting? Then, can this task receive also some parameter? And will it also return something back to the caller? Yes. So you can pass any data called parameter to the function when called. Like in our previous example, previous problem which I said, so I'll call except twice, but once I'll pass matrix A, I'll pass matrix B. Printing I'll call thrice, but once I'll pass A matrix, B matrix, C matrix. Okay, then function can return data also as a result back to its caller. Getting? But whenever function doesn't return anything, so according to Python it returns none, which in other language we say void. Here it is none, but only the peculiarity of Python is that none is also object, because Python is a pure OP. Python ultimately converts everything into an object. Okay? So function can return data as a result back to caller, and function can take parameter also from the outside world. Right? Then functions are of two types. One is called as a user defined. Now, user defined means those which are defined by the programmer. Means what the task the function is supposed to do, the programmer decides. And as the programmer knows the algorithm, programmer can make the changes also within it. Means the programmer knows what the algorithm is within it. Clear? So later, if the programmer wants to modify, can do it. And second is inbuilt function. Okay. Actually, Python differentiates between a library function and an inbuilt function. Okay? Inbuilt means those which are getting automatically loaded in some shared memory when your Python interactive environment start. They are not present in some separate library. Means they are not present in separate module, and you don't have to import that module to use it. Getting? But there are some functions which are developed by some third party. The third party has developed it, and those modules they have just distributed us. We just import it and use it. Getting? But still we can put that library in user defined category also, because they are also developed by some people like us only. Only they have distributed us and we are using it. Getting? So inbuilt meaning those which get loaded in the shared memory at the time when your interactive environment start, and all scripts can use those functions. Getting? So many are there. This I'll take as a last topic in this chapter. Mainly this whole chapter will be devoted for user defined functions. Okay, so mostly we are going to see all the things related to user defined. At the end I'll take one topic called built-in. Now the speciality of built-in is we can just call it, take the benefit of it, but we don't know the algorithm of it. That is abstract for us. We cannot change the algorithm. We don't know the algorithm. It is abstract. We are just using those functions in our program. Get it? So that is the specialty. Okay? Then the benefits, I hope you know it. Just we will recall it. So what do you say? You people just one by one can tell in short. Any benefits which you think?
Length of the program get reduced.
Length of the code will get reduced, yes, because the redundancy you're going to avoid.
We need to just call the name of that function.
Yes, you define once and you just call it any number of times. So in short, the repetition you have avoided, and because of that the code size is reduced. Yes, then some more benefits.
Will help to for code reusability.
Yes, that is also one important benefit, code reusability, because once you define the code you can call it any number of times. Not only in that code, you can give it to others also, no? Means you can make your own module and you can distribute that module, so people can use your developed code in their program. They don't have to waste time in developing the same thing. So reusability is also one more benefit. Clear? Then
just in case if it gives any error, then we need to solve that particular code. We need to look up for that particular function, not all the code.
yes, means related to changes, related to bug fixing. So if you want to do bug fixing, just the bug fixing becomes localized. Means just in that function you have to search the problem, not throughout the code. And same way changes also you have to do one place changes, not everywhere. Getting? So that is the benefit. Okay, so main thing you got it. Coming to advantages, so quickly we'll see. Avoid repetition of code, one benefit, redundancy avoided. Then increases program readability. Okay? Because your problem solving becomes systematic. No? Like the main problem you have divided into sub problem, elegant code you can say, sophisticated systematic code. The main problem divided into sub problem, then for every sub problem you are writing a separate function, and then just you're calling that function. So the cleaner code. So that's the reason readability improves. Then the problem design approach only is changing. You are dividing complex problem into simpler one. Chances of error reduce, because if one error, so obviously everywhere there is error if you don't write a function. But here the error will be localized only within that function. Then changes if you want to do, so you don't have to make changes everywhere. Just do the change only within that function. So lot of benefit. Okay. Now some may ask like, then is it not having any drawbacks or disadvantage? Do you think any of you, just as your past knowledge of whatever programming knowledge you have? No? See, only one drawback is there actually in a procedure, that is some time is spent for that call and return. That is called as actually epilogue prologue. This terminologies, if you have studied somewhere principles of programming languages and all that paper, if you have studied, you might be knowing. So there is some time given for creating a stack frame, because whenever that function is called, one stack frame is created in which all its parameters, the local variables, they are kept. Getting? Then the return address where it is supposed to come back. Okay, so all that things are kept in that frame, and then that frame is kept on a stack, and when the function is over, so that frame is popped, and then the return address is taken, and then the execution continues from there. So always when the function is called, the control goes to the function, the execution takes place, and then the control come back to the next statement and go on. But before the call, some activity is done, and when the function is over, there is some activity. So for that, some time is needed, but actually it is very negligible. But if the call is many time, so it's going to accumulate it. Getting? So only that is the drawback of functions. Okay, it takes some time for call and return, for creating that stack frames and popping that stack frame. Okay? So we'll not go into too detail, but you should know it. Okay, that thing happens internally. Okay, whenever a function is called, the control goes to the function. Then the execution takes place, and then the control come back to the place where it is called. Right? But before the control goes there, some activity is happening, and when it comes back, that time also some activity is happening. Clear? Okay. Now coming to user defined function. Now, as I already said, user defined functions means the definition of that function programmer only is deciding, means the algorithm or what the task that function is supposed to do, that programmer decide. Now in this there are two parts, one is defining and second is calling. Getting? So defining means you are telling that what the function is supposed to do, and calling means you are requesting it to get executed. Right? Okay, see, the functions created by the programmer based on the requirement of the program, means those functions which who define, the programmer only, according to his problem statement and how that he has divided that problem into sub problem, and for every sub problem he'll write a separate algorithm. Correct? So the functions which programmer define, they are called as user defined. Now we have to see how to define it, and then we will be seeing how to call it. These are the two parts of your function. Okay? And already I said defining means you're just telling what the task the function is going to do. But unless and until you call it, it is not going to get executed. Means unless and until you call, you're not taking the benefit of it. I already told the example. Getting on? So example like you have purchased a costly bike or a car, but you're never using it. So what is the use of it? The same way you have defined an algorithm. proper algorithm you have defined, but you are not utilizing it in your code, so there is no use. Now how to define? See, def is the keyword, Python keyword def, then the name of the function, okay, that is function name, right? It should be a valid Python identifier, right? Def function name. So function name is a valid Python identifier. Whatever naming rule Python has given, you have to follow it. Then pair of round brackets, and inside which you can pass the parameters. So there are parameter list. Some books say parameter and argument are one and the same thing. Some say what at the time of call what you pass are argument, in the definition what you receive are parameter, and some books say that you can use that word interchangeably. Parameter and argument same, only in the function definition what you receive they are formal, and at the time of call what you pass they are actual. Okay? And this whole list can be optional. But the speciality of Python is you only have to give the list of variable, as it's a dynamic type language. It's a loosely type. So you don't have to give their data types. You just have to write the name of parameter, x, y, z. Not like C or Java, where they are the strict type language. So you have to tell its data type also, no? Int x, float y, nothing. You just give the name of the parameter. And as it's a header line, it gets over with a colon. So this is a header line complete with a colon, and then the body of the function, in which what can be there? The complete algorithm, which can be a simple input output, or it can be a simple calculation, or it can be a conditional code, it can be a loop, it can be called to some other function, anything it can be. And optional, you can have a return statement. So we will be discussing on this return statement also separately, return and some value. Getting? So some value is also needed or no, that's not necessary. So sometimes you can just write only return. Return some value is also there, and this whole thing only is needed is not necessary. Every function will have a return is not necessary. And if it is having a return, so it's not necessary it has to return some value. Sometimes just to break the function, you use only return. Like to break a loop, you use break. So same way to terminate a function, you use return. But only terminating to use return. With termination, you want to give something to the caller, so you can use some value also after return. Okay? So this is the definition. So defining the function means telling to the interpreter what task the function is going to do. So when you are defining means you are telling the name of the function, what parameters it is going to take, and what task the function is going to perform. Getting? That is defined. And when you call means you are requesting to get executed. Okay? So hope the concept is clear. See, the syntax you can understand. Def is the keyword. Okay? Then name of the function. Def is a keyword. Then after that, function name. After that, round bracket, parameters. Then the statement. And at the end, there will be return some value. Okay? So def, function name, round bracket, parameters, statement, and return some value, which is optional. Now already I told you, defining means what? So defining means telling the name of the function, what parameter the function is going to take, and what task the function is going to perform. Correct? But this task won't run unless and until you call it. The code won't execute unless and until it is called. So now what comes? Calling. So calling means requesting for the function to get executed. Getting? Means when you are requesting to the Python interpreter, please execute this function. So that is call. So when the call is happening, so that time the control goes to the function. The function execute, and after function execution is over, it will again come back to the place where it is called, and it will continue executing the next statement. Getting clear? So calling, when you do, so you have to write name of the function, then here also you will pass the parameters, but we are calling both as parameters. Only the difference is at the time of call what you pass, we call them as actual, and within the function definition, what you receive, they are called as formals. So these are formals and these are actual. And I hope you know it, if it returns something, so you can collect it in a variable. That is the optional part. Collecting in a variable is not a mandatory part. If it is returning, then collect it in a variable. Right? Okay. And then parameters, I hope you got it. The parameters are the values which you are going to pass to the function at the time of call. And this parameter only will come in this formal parameter. Getting? Only the criteria is, remember, this actual parameters are strictly variable, but formal parameters can be anything. To that I'm coming again. A separate topic is there called formal and actual. So that time we'll discuss. So these are the values which you pass to the function call. Now the control goes there, executes, come back, and while coming back, if it is bringing some value, so it will get stored here, and then it will continue with the next state. Getting? Hope it is clear. See, function name, then you pass the arguments, and if the function returns something, you can collect it in a variable. And calling the function means, as I said, request for function execution. Okay? See, def keyword, whenever the def keyword come, so it indicates it is a start to the function definition. Defines the function. Compulsory word. Like in PHP or in JavaScript, there is word function. Function keyword is there. Correct? But C, C++, Java, they don't have such special word. Okay? So def keyword defines the function and is mandatory. Okay? To create functions. Return statement also is not compulsory. Means within your function, you need to have return, is not mandatory. For return, we'll be discussing separate. There is a separate slide for return, don't worry. Okay? At this moment, just remember, return keyword is going to return some value back to the caller. Okay? So after performing the task, it will bring the control back, but after bringing the control back, this value, whatever it is returning, is copied in this variable. Okay? Returns some value and it is optional. Means every function should have a return statement, is not mandatory. Okay? So hope till here it is clear, guys. Then we can see some examples, then lot many things to learn.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay?
Yeah.
Sure. Good. So keep giving me confirmation. Now coming to parameter. Now these are some basic concepts. Without that we cannot start with exercise solving and all. So we'll take some examples, but before that these all elementary things are to be cleared. Okay. Coming to next thing, that is parameter. So what are parameters? So parameters are the values which you pass to the function at the time of call, and these are the values which the function definition receives, and on that value that function operates on. The function is going to operate on. So it's going to operate on some values which it is receiving, and the values which it is receiving are passed to it at the time of call. So both are parameters only. The values which you pass at the time of call and that values only which are received inside the function definition. Actually both are treated parameter, only we will give them a separate name. Those values which you pass at the time of call is called as actual. Those values which you pass at the time of call are called as actual, and those which are received within the function definition are called as formal. You also call it as dummy. ठीक है, तो actual parameter, formal parameter. ठीक है, see, so parameters are the values that are provided at the time when the function is called, or which are received within the function definition, both that are provided while defining the function or during the function call, both are considered as parameter. Right? Now those values which you receive in the definition, we will call it as formal, and those which you pass at the time of call, we'll call it as actual. Getting? See, when we provide values during the function definition, okay, means those which are received in the definition, they are treated as formal or dummy, and those values which you pass at the time of call, and on those values only that function is going to operate on. Okay, so when we provide the values during function call, the values that are operated on, then those are called as actuals. Now only the criteria, remember, actuals are strictly supposed to be, sorry, I told wrong, formals are strictly supposed to be variables. Formals are strictly variable, but that is not the criteria for actual. Actuals can be anything, means it can be an expression, it can be a variable, it can be a literal, it can be called to some other function, anything it can be. So actuals don't have any criteria. Correct? But ultimately they all are objects only. Every expression will be also internally converted into object. So actuals can be literal value, variable, expression, call to some other function, anything. But formal strictly has to be a variable. You need to remember that. Okay? Now what I'll do is I'll just show you one simple example of function, and you people just identify who is formal and who is actual. Okay? See, I'm defining one function add, right? And to that I'm passing two parameters x and y. Now inside one more local variable I'm creating z, in which I'm storing x and y, and then I'm returning z. Just to increase number of lines I wrote. So some may say, why didn't you wrote return x plus z? You can do it. Clear? Here just for increasing the number of statements, I purposely increased one variable and then I'm returning that variable. Okay? Now I'm going to call it. So suppose I'm calling add with value 2 and 4. Okay? So at the time of call, what you are passing 2 and 4, they are the actuals. And these values are received in the function definition. So x will receive 2, y will receive 4. Is it? And then in a local variable addition and return z. Whatever z is returned comes here, and that print displays on the monitor. Okay? So in this context, 2 and 4 are actual and x and y are formal. Right? And that actuals can be anything. As I said, you can pass an expression, you can pass a variable. Suppose I'm having a comma b 5 comma 8, and then I'm calling, and while calling I'm passing a and b, or I'm passing like this a plus b and b by 2 will also do, doesn't make difference. Okay? So the concept is clear to you. Or you can pass add a comma b and add a minus b. Means I'm waiting for a minus b's answer. Sorry, a comma b. Okay? What I'm doing, add a comma b, and whatever answer is coming, that again I'm passing to this add. Getting? So accordingly the answer you will get. So hope you got it. So quickly, one simple example I have taken. Def add num1 num2. Okay? So num1 and num2 are the two parameters which are received in the function definition. See, when we provide values to the function definition, then they are called as formal. So num1 and num2 are formal. Then value is a local variable. Formals are also local only. We are coming to that topic. That is also again an exhaustive topic called scope rules. We will be learning all the 4 different scopes which Python provide. That is a separate topic to be studied. So num1 plus num2 stored in value, and then we are returning that value. Okay? So in this context, this num1 and num2 both are formals. Now somewhere I am calling it in my main program print add 5 6. So at the time of call, what you pass, when we provide the value during the function call, then those on which the function is going to operate, so those are called as actual. So here 5 and 6 are actuals, right? I hope it is clear till here.
Yes.
Sure, no? All of you are hearing me carefully.
Yes, sir.
Good.
Yes, sir.
Then coming to the next thing, that is about the return statement. Okay? So we'll discuss something about return. Now return statement is also a flow transfer statement, like break and continue, which we have discussed in our previous chapter, that is chapter 2. Getting? Were they flow transfer instructions? Yes. Break terminates a loop. Whenever within a loop break comes, so it will stop the loop and bring the control directly outside of the loop. If continue comes, so it will skip the remaining code and come to the beginning of the loop. So same way return is also a type of flow transfer. What return does? So whenever in a function body return is encountered, then it will stop executing the function. Okay, whenever Python interpreter encounters a return statement within the function body, then it is going to stop executing the function. Okay? And the control is coming back to the caller. Means the control is transferred back to the place where it is called. And then it will continue executing the next statement, whichever is the statement after that call. Okay? So what I want to say is clear to you. The return statement when encountered within the function body by the Python interpreter, so it will stop that function execution, like break. Like break stops a loop, the same way return stops the function, and the control will come back to the caller. Getting? Okay? Now if your return is within a loop, and the loop is within a function, loop, and then return, so obviously if return is stopping the function, so it is obviously going to stop the loop as well. You understanding or no? Clear? Suppose this is your function. Okay? Now within that there is a loop, and inside that there is a return statement. So return is going to terminate the function, so obviously this loop is also going to get terminated along with it. Okay? And only return and return some value, both provision are there. Only return also you can write, and return with some value. So generally when we use one from this two, that is up to you. Like if your function doesn't want to return anything, but you want to just stop that function and come out based on the condition, like some condition is there, and if that condition has come, you want to just come out of that function back to the caller, then use only return. Okay? But if you want to stop and along with that give some value back to the caller, so you can use this second one. Both are valid. Okay? And any code which is after return will never execute. That will be called as a unreachable, code not reachable, or dead code. So any code which is coming after the return will never get executed. Getting? For an example, if I show you this way, like def foo I am writing, then print hello, and then I am writing return, and then I am writing print never executed. You know it, when I have given a statement like that, never execute, so that is never going to get printed. So when I say foo, okay, so it will call the function, it will print that hello, and the return statement will simply stop it. So once it stops it, it comes back to the place where it is called. So this statement will never run. Is it printing only hello? Yes. Okay? And when the function doesn't return anything, and still you try to check what it is returning, so it returns by default none. Getting? Like the same one, if I write in print foo, so foo is called, hello is printed, return stops the execution, come back, but it is just a return, so it's not going to return anything. So what it will return? None. And if you check it, it is none. So hello printed, but this returns none. Okay? So I hope you got it. See. So return is flow transfer statement. Means it will alter the flow of execution from one point to another. Then during execution of function, if return statement is encountered, the execution of function is stopped and control transfers to place where the function was called. Okay? So whenever the function is getting executed, and in that function body, if your Python interpreter encounters a return statement, so that place only the execution of the function is stopped, and the control come back to the place where it is called, and it will run the statement which is after it. Whatever is the following statement, it will run. Return can optionally return some value also back to the caller. Getting? And in every function you have to have a return is not necessary. So return is not mandatory. Mandatory means compulsory. So it's not compulsory that you have to have a return statement in every function. It is not at all compulsion. Okay? And if we are not writing any return statement, then what does it return? None. Like in this case only, okay, I'm writing a foo function which is just printing hello, but there is no return statement in it. Okay? No return. And still I want to check what has come in that, what it is returning. So it is returning, it will print hello, but it will return none. Getting? By default. Like in C, if your function, okay, is, but that depends on the return type in C. Normally for integer type and all, it's there. Getting? So I'll not confuse you people, leave it. Okay. So examples here I have written def add x comma y s equal to x plus y, return s. And now I am writing print add 2 6. So 2 will copy in x, 6 will copy in y, then the addition will take place, the result is in s, it returns it, and that return value will come here, which print displays on the monitor. Getting? And as I said, like after return, if there is any code, will never run, will never execute. It's like a unreachable code, dead code. Dead code means what? The code which after removing also is not having any effect on the output. Means your code will remain code will remain nahi, the output will remain same irrespective you keep it or you delete it. That's the reason it's called dead code. So if you remove it, then also the result is same, and if you keep it, then also the result is same. Like here, see, print foo. So will it display hello? Then the return will bring the control back here, so it won't print this world. But what it is returning by default? None. Getting? It should, no? I didn't. Here, from my side, it is wrong. It should print none. Which I showed you here, see. Only foo when you write, then it won't display none. Okay? But print foo if you write, then it will print hello and then return default none. Getting? So I have done this mistake, you should remember. That is from my side. Okay. Should be like this. Okay. Or if I call it just as a function, like this, only foo if I call, so it will display only hello. You can think from that point. Okay? Okay, coming back, and then the last discussion, like if there is no return statement only, like I have written bar, def bar, print hello. Okay? And now I'm calling bar function, but I'm checking also what it is returning. So print bar. So bar will do its work of printing hello, but by default it returns none. That will be displayed. Okay? So till here, whatever I told, I hope it is clear. Lot many things to learn in this chapter. Means this chapter will take ample number of lectures. Like at least 3 to 4 lectures it will take to finish, because there are many more concepts to be learned. Like we have to learn different parameter passing techniques, then we have to learn scope rules, then we have to learn lambda function, recursion, lot of things are there. Okay? So very big part of this programming. Okay? Okay. Now let's solve these questions, few questions. Okay, so please confirmation I want from all side. Till here whatever we discussed, is it clear to you guys?
Yes, sir.
Sure, others also? Okay, some typing here
Yes,
in the
sir.
chat window. Okay, so now solve this few questions. Like write a Python function to find the maximum of 3 numbers. Okay, max of 3 numbers. Very simple program to find out max of 3 numbers. I'll create a file. These are other than the assignment. That assignment file will be different. In that, some more questions. These are just intermediary questions. Like just we have learned that concept. So let's try to apply it. Okay. I'll give name to it as func1. Now we are told to define a function called max3, which will take 3 arguments. Suppose x, y, z. So x, y, z are passed to the function definition. They are used within the function definition. So these are called as formals or dummy. Getting? Now we will calculate it. Like if x is greater than y and x is greater than z. So obviously x is maximum, max of 3. If y is greater than x and y is greater than z, then return y. Else return z. Okay, so this is the logic which I think for maximum of 3 numbers. What do you say?
Yes.
Okay, So if x is greater than both the two, so x is maximum. Then if y is greater than the other two, like first and the third, so y is maximum. Otherwise, obviously z. Now we have to test it. Okay, so we will do the testing of it. So we will accept value from user, int input, enter a or enter first number as you want. It is up to the programmer. Enter b, int input, enter c. Okay, now I'll display it like print, and you give like this max. Up to you how you do the printing. There are different ways of printing, I have told you. Dot format I can write, and I can write x comma y comma a comma b comma c comma max 3 a comma b comma c. Right? So a will be substituted at first brace bracket, b will be substituted at second, c will be at third, and whatever the answer this max 3 abc returns. So a, b, c are the actuals and x, y, z are the formal. A value get copied in x, b in y, c in z, calculation, answer, return, that is substituted here. Different ways are there, up to you how you write it. Getting? You can do it by this way also. Print, then max of %d, %d, %d equal to %d. And then I'll write percent, and then I'll create a tuple of values a, b, c, and max 3 of a, b, c. Is this way also valid? So many ways are there. I can write like this: max, comma a, then comma, then b, then comma, then c, then close bracket equal to, and then comma max 3 of a comma b comma c. These are just list of value. Max bracket, then a, then comma, then b, then again comma, then c, then close, then the answer. Okay? Here just I'll write SCP equal to blank, means I'll not put a separator, because by default all these values will be separated with a space. So I'm not putting a separator. So just I wanted to tell you one output can be produced by different ways. So we'll give some value like 67, 89, 34. So accordingly. Is it displaying the output all three same way? Only the way of printing was different, but the result is still same. Getting on all of you?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Then you can try some other questions also. Let's try. The second one is write a Python function to multiply all the elements in a list. Okay. Means there is a list and I'm going to pass the list, and all the elements in the list you have to multiply and return the answer. Okay? Only how the list is passed, that I'll tell you. Always remember all these iterable objects, whichever iterable objects are there, like list and tuple and dictionary and set, they are never passed by value. Okay? Means the copy is not passed, the reference is passed. Okay? Means in your main program you have created a list of integers and floats and whatever, and its reference is there in one variable L. Now you have called the function and you have passed this L. So when you are passing L, only this reference is passed. This whole list is not passed as a duplicate. And now wherever you have defined the function f, okay, and it is having one parameter x. ठीक है, तो that x is not going to be the clone of this list or duplicate of this list. Only this reference is passed. So this formal variable x is going to receive only this reference, and that is also going to refer here. And therefore through x, if you do any changes here, you insert something, you append something, so that changes will be seen to L also. You are understanding what I am trying to tell you? These things we'll be learning again in the data structures chapter, that is 4th chapter. Just remember, whenever you pass any iterable object, that is a group object, which is a list or a tuple or anything, so never a duplicate is passed. Means there a clone is not created. You understanding? The list will remain here only, or a tuple or a dictionary, whatever. Only the reference is passed. So this dummy variable is collecting only the reference, and both are referring to the same list. Getting? And now through this x, if I insert something or I append something and the function get over and I come back to the main program, so the changes will be visible to L. Always remember, it is as good as like two keys of the same house. Getting? House is same, there are only two keys of the same house. One key is given to the neighbor and one key is with the owner. Wherever the list is created, that is the owner, and when you pass it to the function, the function is the neighbor. Getting? But both are having that keys. So can the neighbor also use the key and access your house, and you are the owner, so you also can access it. Getting clear? So both are having access to that house. Exactly same technique. Okay? So that is the peculiarity. Now if I want to write this code for finding multiplication of all the elements in the list, I'll give name to it as func2. Okay? Def, I'll give the name to the function as mult list. Okay? Or complete list I'll give. Then to that I'm passing one list, lst. You give lst, whatever name you want. I'll give a dummy name, lst. Now you know, as it's a list, how you can traverse it. One by one elements I want to retrieve from it. So can I use my standard for loop? Yes or no, guys? Can I use the standard Python for loop to traverse elements in the list?
Yes.
Yes.
Sure, no?
Yes.
Correct? Why? Because Python for loop is meant only for that purpose.
Yes.
Python has designed that for loop for traversing such iterable objects only. Clear? Now can I create one temporary variable called product in which I'll store 1. Don't store 0 by mistake. I was doing that. I realized I'm doing mistake. Why 0? Again, basic mathematics. If you keep it 0, so always the answer will be 0, because anything multiplied by 0 is 0. Now I'm traversing that list. I hope you know how to traverse an iterable object in Python using a for loop. So will it fetch one by one value from that lst in x, and that you just multiply it with product. Can I write prod star equal x? I have told you all this also, compound arithmetic assignment. Compound arithmetic assignment. Chapter 1, last topic was that only. Entire table I gave. This is same as product is equal to product into x. Is it? Product is equal to product into x. So instead of writing that, can I write in short form like prod star equal x? And then return the product. Done. Now we'll test this function. Can I write one list? Okay. Then I'm calling the function mult list, and I'm passing that L to it. So will it take the multiplication of it? Getting? Now these are quite easy values. So 10 and 10, 100, and 100 into 3, 300. Getting? Now some may have a doubt. Okay, this L is hard coded created. You are giving me the hard coded value. If I want to create it runtime from user, then how to do it? Don't worry, we will be learning it in chapter 4. Everything is there in the store, okay, for you people to learn. Okay, I'll show you how to add the values in that list at runtime. There are methods given because L is a object of list class, so it is having its own methods like append, insert. Okay, so using that you can do it. See, here I'm running it. It is just giving you the final value, right? You can change and see one more value I'll add. Okay? So till here I hope it is clear. Now one more will solve to wind up with today's session. You tell me, the other you will try. Other questions you can try, one we will try. Which one do you say?
4.
Fourth one. Okay. Others also want the same one. Okay. The fourth one will try. Write a Python function that takes a list and returns a new list with unique elements of that list. Now here actually you can do it in a very easy way also. There are provision given. But here as we are writing functions, so we will write our own algorithms. Correct? But Python says this algorithms also you can avoid because Python has already given facilities. Like if you give a list with repeated value to some library function, it returns you a list with a unique value. No need to write logic also. But here we will write logic. Okay? See. I'll create one more called func3. I'll give def. Now the name I'll give like list unique. Will it do? Or unique list, whatever name, how the naming you want. Now to that you will be passing one list. Okay, that is a list whose all repeated elements you want to remove and create a list with only unique values. Is it right? Okay. Now inside you create one more temporary list, T list I'll call it as, which is an empty list. At this moment it is empty. How to create an empty list? Just assign square. Very easy. Python makes coding too easy comparative to Java and all. Getting in Java the coding is more lengthy than Python. Getting? So LST TLST equal to square. So it's just an empty list. Agreed? Now you traverse this list one by one. And each element you check whether it is already present. If it is not, then only you append it. But if it is present, just ignore it. Okay? So now can I traverse each value in the list in this way? For x in LST. You know it, this is the standard for loop for traversing a list. So one by one value will be retrieved in x. Now I want to check whether that x is present in LST. Take the benefit of in operator. Python is having an in operator. So if x not in TLST, x is one by one value from LST, but I'm checking whether it is not in TLST. If it is not in TLST, add it. So how to add it? TLST dot append and x. So append is a method of list class and TLST is an object of list class. Clear? LST is also object of list class only. So append is a method of that list class and you are passing X. So it will add it. Is your TLST growing one by one? And at the end you return your TLST. Getting? I hope it is clear. Meaning, suppose you have passed LST as some values like this. Okay, then TLST, which is initially empty. Now first value it will take, that is 7. Is 7 not in this TLST? Yes, so append it. 3. Is it not in TLST? Yes, append it. 5. Not. Append it. Again, 3. Is it present? 3. Is it present? Yes, so ignore. 5. Present. Ignore. Ignore means it will not go in if. It will just simply come to the next value. Get it? Again 5 present, 7 present, 6 not present. Again add. Then 5 present, yes. 3 present, yes. So whenever it is present, it doesn't come in if. It just retrieves the next value. Checks the next value. Okay? And finally this TLST we will be returning. Now we will test it. I can take this example only. Now this is my main program L. Then I'm calling and collecting the answer in T, that is unique list. Okay, and pass L to it, and now you print it. You can print your original list and you can print your unique list. Is it right, all of you? See, so this is your original list and this is the unique list.